Good evening. Tonight our scripture reading comes from Genesis 45 verses 1 to 10. It's the history of Joseph where he reveals himself to his brothers as the second in command over all of Egypt when they come to him to get food in time of famine. And then he says in verse 5, he says to his brothers, "And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." God is not like us. He does not have to be affected by what people do or by what people say about him. And yet miraculously, he does allow himself to be affected by what we say and what we do. We don't have this choice. We can't help but be affected by negatively or positively by what people say and what they do. We thank God for the positive influence of others, but we also struggle with the negative influences of people. We struggle to cope with the scars of abuse, contempt, rejection, physical violence, and other traumas caused by others. When thinking about these things, it's fitting to come back to the history of Joseph. Joseph experienced various negative influences of other people. He was his father's favorite son that was spoiled more than his brothers. He was thrown into a well by his brothers and later sold into slavery, ending in the house of Potiphar. He was falsely accused by Potiphar's wife and thrown into jail where he was forgotten for 2 years. Now, of course, Joseph wasn't innocent in all of these things, but the fact is that people, and even those closest to him, did terrible things to him. But despite of these things, Joseph survived. As a slave, he worked himself into an important position through good and faithful service. Even in jail, he was trusted with the responsibility of interpreting the dreams of the cupbearer, the baker, and even Pharaoh, which led to him being appointed as the second in command over all of Egypt. How did he manage this? The secret to his success is revealed when he reveals himself to his brothers by saying, "And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." The secret of Joseph's success is found not in what he did, but in what God was doing. Throughout the story of his life, we see the hand of God, we see the presence of the Lord with him. This is Joseph's confession. "It is the Lord and not you, my brothers, that sent me to Egypt." He received the grace to look past the actions of the people in his life. He received the grace to forgive them. He received the grace to put his trust in the Lord. And later he received the grace to express the mystery of God's disposal over his life by saying, "Do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." It is striking that Joseph says that the Lord sent him. We would expect that he would say that the Lord protected him or guided him or provided for him, and yes, all of that is true. But Joseph realized that he was sent by the Lord. It shows that he understood that God had a purpose for his life, had a purpose for placing him on this path. God prepared him for a purpose. The purpose was that he would be able to provide for his family and the people of Egypt and around Egypt in a time of famine. Later it would become clear that he was sent by God so that Israel, the people of God, could be born in Egypt. Looking back on our own lives and the influences of others in this way, we see that it was all in the hand of the Lord. Even if they did bad things to you, God could still use this for good. Everything that happened to you, everything that influenced your life, that others did to you, has been used by the Lord to send you to the place where you are today. Try to look past the influence of people. Try to see what the Lord is doing. Look at how He prepared you and sent you to do what you must do today. Good evening.